So basically what I'm trying to introduce you is the absolute normality mind. Now that kind of wisdom, in order to cultivate this kind of wisdom, you have 3 different methods. Thöjung Sherab, Samjung Sherab, Gomjung Sherab. Through hearing the teachings, you can develop a certain amount of wisdom, such as, hearing these teachings. For instance, if you think, okay, this makes sense, then that's a kind of a small time, sort of small example wisdom. And then, by contemplating on what you have heard and what you have read, if it develops more confidence, that's much better. But both these wisdom cultivated through hearing or the reading or contemplation, are more like an inferential wisdom, a wisdom that developed through inferential logic. It's like hearing an advice from a doctor and contemplating about it. The real wisdom has to come from meditating. When you meditate, what you do, you let go of all this reference. Gradually you try to get rid of all the reference, such as the view, the path, the fruit, the goal. All this reference needs to be diminished. As long as you have a reference, you will always compare. And comparing with a reference is usually a cause of insecurity. I'm not talking about emptying the mind, by the way, because that itself is a reference. I'm talking about not get caught by the reference. Not get caught, not get trapped by the reference. So this is a brief sort of introduction to something like a prologue to this sutra. So to actually start the sutra, name of the sutra is Vajrachedika, which at the moment I'm translating as one that cuts even the Vajra. Basically, this sutra is also referred as the Prajna Paramita Sutra that has 300 verses. The sutra is very condensed, and the purpose of making it very condensed is so that the followers can read, write, and keep it. Sutra begins with Ananda's proclamation saying, "Thus have I heard," at one point. Now that "thus have I heard" is quite a big statement. One way, it is a proclamation that he is a witness. Ananda was a witness. And also, when he said, "Thus have I heard," the word "heard," that he has heard, that proclaims, that is stating that this is not what he is explaining or he is interpreting out of his realization. He is merely repeating what Buddha said. He has heard. He is not really claiming that he has understood. You have to remember, this is a Mahayana Sutra, but the narrator is the Charvaka. Ananda is not a Mahayana personality. He is a Charvaka. But the Charvakas, they do that. Actually, it's very strange that we Mahayana people sort of look down at the, Charvakas, calling them Hinayana. It's very strange. I find it very strange, because if without them, none of our sutras would exist. Heart Sutra, again, is narrated by Shariputra, which is another Charvaka person. And also, in "Thus have I heard," at one time, that also is stating that at a particular time, in order to make a precision, such as is not a general teaching, but it was a particular time, particular place, a particular time, particular place. In this case is Anantha Pindika's park. Anantha Pindika's park, I think there is, in the middle of the park, there is a grove called Jita Grove. And Anathapindika's park is in Sarvasti city of Sarvasti. It is believed that Sarvasti is probably one place that Buddha stayed the longest. Not only Ananda, there was other audience, 1,550 great bhikshus, 1,550. And not only the Sharvaka bhikshus, but there was also many Bodhisattva Mahasattvas. One morning, Buddha embarked from his dwelling place with his dharma robe and the begging bowl and went to the city Sarvasti. After begging the alms, he then entered in the action of eating first, and when he completes the last meal of that day, which is the midday, he places his begging bowl and the dharma robe and then washes his feet. Washed his feet. These are all symbolic teachings in order to sort of create the atmosphere of this profound teaching. And then he sat on the mat that is arranged by the gods. He sat very straight and meditated on, not really meditated, he stayed very straight with absolute mindfulness. At that point, many bhikshus approached to the Buddha, did prostrations and did a circumambulation, 3 times of circumambulation, and sat nearby. And then at one particular moment, the great being Subhuti also came and sat at a certain place. And then Subhuti stood up, put his dharma robe on the left shoulder, kneeling, with his right knee on the earth, with an Anjalika Mudra. He then spoke to the Buddha. So that is the setting. In the sutras, you will always find this, talking about the setting. I think maybe it is a very Indian thing to do, but it's also actually quite profound. This setting, talking about the setting, is quite profound, because it gives us some kind of a historical background. I mean, you should remember, this is a very, very important discourse. Some of these metaphysical discourse are what today's scientists, physicists, they do in the conference room as if they have sort of discovered it at last. But it has been done and sort of discussed 2,500 years ago. If you really think about this, it's quite amazing that more than 2,500 years ago, somewhere in India, under these trees, Buddha with his disciples, they were discussing some of the most progressive subject. They weren't writing or they weren't discussing about how to rule the nation, how to threaten the people with all kinds of, like a threat, like if you don't do such and such, you will go to hell, and that. They were not discussing that at all. They were discussing something very profound, something very progressive. And then it is understandable that Subhuti, after kneeling down, he actually began with praising the Buddha. He was saying how amazing Buddha was. How amazing that Buddha paid special attention to the bodhisattvas. Okay. He said, how amazing twice. Quite important remark he was making. Okay. This needs a little bit of explanation. I think probably it's because of these, the great masters in China also really emphasize the reading of the Diamond Sutra. See, like a Chinese also believe in air, don't you? Air is very important. Like family heir, sort of the lineage holder. Many of the Chinese Kung Fu films are like that. I've seen. Always a dispute between the lineage holder, the two lineage holders. And it's sort of one lineage holder, isn't it? It's kind of important. Like a big brother, isn't it? Sort of. Yeah. See, to establishing the Buddha's heir is very important. Sangjiji Dung, we call it Dung, means like an heir. So, if you read the Diamond Sutra, and if you contemplate on this, and if you meditate on this, you become the Buddha's heir. Nobody becomes the main heir, okay? So that's the great thing about this. Everybody is equally Buddha's heir. Not only the children of the Buddha, no? Because there's the children and then there's the heir. Children is kind of, even the illegitimate children, right? Children, like child, Buddha's child. We are not only talking about being a child, we are talking about the heir, the one who can have all the right to the wealth of the Buddha. So that's what we are trying to establish ourselves as the Buddha's heir, so that we have the right to enjoy all the wealth of the Buddha. Now maybe I made a mistake here. We are not really establishing ourselves as the heir, but we are recognizing that we have the quality of Buddha's heir. And that is quite amazing, that we have the Buddha heir within us. The fact that we are Buddha, we have the potential, we have the Buddha nature is amazing. And fact that Buddha pays special attention to the bodhisattvas who nurtures this potential is amazing. So the Subhuti asked Buddha, how should a bodhisattva who is following this profound path, how does a bodhisattva accomplish this path? How does this bodhisattva embrace the enlightened mind? Buddha said, well said. Buddha acknowledged Subhuti's request and advised Subhuti to pay attention with a good concentration. And Buddha proclaimed that he is going to explain how a bodhisattva must dwell in this profound path and establish this path and embrace the bodhicitta. Okay. So we'll have about 15 minutes break here. So, the first thing Buddha said to Subhuti is kind of a bodhisattva's motivation. How should a bodhisattva think? Bodhisattva must have this determination that however many living beings there are, all types of sentient beings that are born from eggs, such as birds, from the womb, such as human beings, from moisture, such as butterflies, or miraculous birds, such as gods, whether they are sentient beings that has form, such as us, sentient beings that does not have form, such as some type of gods or ghosts, beings, and so that's covering quite a lot. And then beings that have perception, such as us. But not only us, there are certain type of God, they are very exalted being, they are very special being. They have no gross aggregates, but they only have perception. And even higher beings, higher God beings, those who does not even have the perception. A bodhisattva must lead all these sentient beings to the ultimate nirvana, so that all these sentient beings can be liberated. Okay. Now, in this statement, we hear, of course, beings like those beings in the hell realm, hungry ghost realms, or the beings in the animal realms, of course, needs nirvana, needs to be liberated to nirvana. But even the beings, those who are in the realm of non-perception, that is like the highest God realm. In fact, these God realms at many times can be even misunderstood as the nirvana. In fact, some of the religion might be only aiming at that level of state, and that level or state of being. All these, without any exception, must be liberated. That's how the Bodhisattva must think. Okay, but that's not the whole part of the dialogue here. The real part of the dialogue is coming next. Buddha said, when these innumerable beings are liberated, a Bodhisattva must not think that a single being has been liberated. Now that's the real one. Remember I was talking about a placebo? See, may all sentient beings be happy, may all sentient beings reach enlightenment. That is the motivation practice. And Buddha is saying in his next dialogue, the next part of the dialogue, he's saying that a Bodhisattva must not in truth think that not a single being has been liberated. Now that shows that the relative bodhicitta is actually a placebo. Again, do not misunderstand. When the Buddha said, a Bodhisattva must not think that a single being has been liberated. He's not saying as in terms of like, okay, Bodhisattva must not satisfy with that kind of act of liberating sentient beings. Bodhisattva must carry on liberating more sentient beings. He's not saying that. He's saying a Bodhisattva, in truth, in reality, if a Bodhisattva sees a truly existing self, truly existing person, truly existing living being, then Bodhisattva is having a wrong idea. Such a Bodhisattva is not an authentic Bodhisattva. A Bodhisattva who has this notion that a lifespan exists. Lifespan. Like, basically, this is how our mind think. Some of us, we think we are Bodhisattva. These sentient beings need my help. And these sentient beings are truly there suffering, a true suffering. As long as Bodhisattva has that kind of clinging or the fixation towards an entity that is called sentient being, then a Bodhisattva is only collecting a cause of suffering. See, in reality, self does not exist. A person does not exist. Living being does not exist. There is no such thing as lifespan. What is self? Self is a label that is given to a gathering of few entities, such as aggregates. Like a table, for instance, legs, whatever, the surface of the table, or many of the components of the table. When put together, then there is a notion of table, self. Likewise, a person. Similarly, living being. Also, lifespan. Lifespan does not exist apart from being a mere label. For instance, the previous moment of our life, this very life, the previous moment, for instance, like the break that we had, that's gone, forever gone. It is no more an entity. Next moment of our life, such as this afternoon, we can only imagine, we can only assume that it will happen, but we are not sure. It's not a material yet. See, when we talk about a lifespan, we are talking about something very long, some kind of a duration. We believe in duration. That's why we believe in the vitamins and ginsengs and stuff like that. But in truth, all these are just an imagination. Like this afternoon's, whatever you have planned. It's because of that, when the Bodhisattva liberates sentient beings, a Bodhisattva must know that there is no one that is being liberated. There is no person, there is no living being that gets liberated. Buddha continues saying, Subhuti, when a Bodhisattva engage into the practice of generosity, actually, before that I must summarize the one that we were talking. See, earlier when we talk about not realizing that there is no truly existing being that is being liberated. When a bodhisattva knows that, that is the absolute bodhicitta. When a bodhisattva thinks there is no sentient beings to liberate it, it is not a denial, by the way. Because if you deny, then that means there is a sentient being to be denied. Bodhisattva is not abandoning the sentient beings, thinking that there is no sentient beings to be liberated. This is why in the Vajracchedika, Buddha said, Bodhisattva must have the motivation to liberate all sentient beings, not only birds and human beings, but everyone, including the God, those who have no perception. But Bodhisattva must realize that there is not a single being that gets liberated. No single being that is truly existing. That is the ultimate bodhicitta. Generosity, again, when a bodhisattva engages into the practice of generosity, bodhisattva must realize that there is no truly existing object that you are generous with. When he is giving a coin to a beggar, for instance, he must give. Buddha never is saying that he should not. This is so profound, For instance, like a renunciation mind. The standard concept of renunciation mind is by knowing that it is useless, it is essenceless, therefore we get rid of them. Yeah? For instance, when we are a child, we love our sand castles. We find it very entertaining, like the sand castles and toys. And then, after a while, when we are around teenager, then we don't find it interesting. It's essenceless. It doesn't interest you, because the sand castle is not real. Then it gets replaced by rollerblade or skating boards or baggy jeans and stuff like that. And then when you reach to adulthood, you realize that that's completely useless. That's really, senseless to do the, like skateboard and, things like this is senseless. Then you wear Rolex watches and buy expensive cars and gold-plated teeth and all that. And then you reach like around 80, then you find these are useless. Then it's replaced by tablecloths, chopsticks and some other things, I don't know what. That is a kind of a renunciation by knowing that basically you are tired with the old toy. Very important to have that. But here, we are not talking only that kind. We are talking about there's nothing to renounce. That kind of renunciation, the greatest renunciation. Like when you dismantle the sand castles, there is no real castle that you are dismantling. Like generosity, for instance, like a coin. In our world, we have somehow managed ourselves, got trapped into this notion that money, possession, coins are so important. It's all like that. It's necessary. It's a human mind that decides that this is necessary. For instance, right now, oil is a very necessary thing because this is our human mind. We need to drive cars, we need to fly in the aeroplane, therefore oil is important. After maybe 50 years, we realize that water is important, and then we'll be fighting everywhere for the water, stuff like that. So the value that we put on the oil, a coin, gold, diamond, doesn't matter, whatever, place, real estate, all this is a value that is being imputed by this deluded mind. In reality, they are beyond that kind of value. So this is why when a bodhisattva practices the generosity, must not rely on a form, sound, taste and all so forth. and even the sign of the generosity. Because if a bodhisattva engages into the practice of generosity, longing or relying on signs, then bodhisattva is measuring. If a bodhisattva is measuring, then bodhisattva is using a reference. Bodhisattva is longing for a finishing line. If there is a finishing line, then there is a suffering, there is a competition, there is anxiety, there is a anxiety.